So, in the previous sessions, we had been seeing the foundations of a business, knowledge based business, and how people inside a business can be valued to the business so the business can contribute to the economy, broader economy. So, how we could upskill ourselves or be relevant in this era, right? So, we till now we had been seeing a philosophical understanding of things, right, from a conceptual level. Today, let's dive into some practicality, right? So this will summarize everything that we had been talking and what to actually do. So we established how to approach the work till today. So in this class, in this session, let's establish uh, what should we actually do, right? Not just from an approach point of view. Okay, so let's just to summarize whatever happened. So we saw that business is where people raw material is taken and produced something of value, and skills are where people contribute to this, and this translates into knowledge based economy where some information is converted into insight, which is the value that is being provided by this, and the particular skill that is needed here is human consciousness, which is what we saw as context and processing, right? Information processing, right? Information to insight conversion, and what people bring in here primarily is consciousness. So that's what we had been seeing. So let's take a step back now. As we approach the AI agentic era, let's take a step back and see the reality of software businesses here. How software businesses are practically being approached all these days. What is relevant here and what is not relevant here, right? Only then we could, only if we understand what is happening today, we can understand, or what has been happening, we could decide our course of action to the future. So let's take a pause here and just go back in the last decade. How much of this, which is the truth for knowledge based economy, right? So there is no dispute that knowledge based economy has to operate like this, right? Only then it can create something of value, right? So let's take a step back and see if actually knowledge based economy, or especially the software tech industry, is actually doing it, right? So in over the last decade, what has happened in the knowledge based economy and especially in the software industry is a lot of things that to create the value has already been automated, right? So if you are writing a code, if you are approaching a work, if you are gathering requirements from a client, if you are documenting requirements for a software, if you are doing market research for a software, if you are going to do devise a go to market strategy of a software, or if you are going to write a code, you have processes for everything already, right? So only in the last decade or in the last 2 decades, software industry or knowledge based economy saw the likes of terms like scrum, right, and Six Sigma. All these things started to emerge, which are efficient methodologies to organize a process, right? So but the software industry has been observing this, the implementation of all these things in the last decade, but in practice all these were devised for a skill based economy, a skill based business, right? So these things work perfectly, the concepts of these things are good, right? But they don't optimize for creativity, rather they optimize for productivity, right? So that is why over the last 2 decades, software industry has already implemented a lot of things, right, that tunes people towards productivity and not creativity, right? Because that's what we had been listening over the last decade in the of the how to make people more productive, how to make people how to reduce the time of a developer in this, how to automate this process so that someone need not work. Of course automation is necessary, right? But in the process of value creation in a knowledge based business like software, right, the value transaction alone cannot be of a sustained or a high quality value, right? So that's what we have established, right? So there are certain processes that needs to be automated, but in the process of doing it, the industry itself, like most of the companies, have forgotten the roots of the knowledge based economy, that they try to automate anything and everything, which is where the implementation of processes like this, or the you have certified people who will do this for a software company, right? All these things, right? To make a software company process compliant, right? Which by itself in principle should not work with respect to knowledge based economy, right? Because why would an economy that thrives on an insight, or thrives on, that would only thrive on creativity, right, will go behind implementing things of a lot of productive tools, right? So making someone productive is not wrong again, right? Productivity scaling is also needed, but it shouldn't be done mindlessly. But sadly, over the last couple of decades, a lot of things in software has been optimized for productivity rather than creativity. That's why every employee is trained for to adhere to a process, right? You take a developer, you have to adhere to a process. You take a marketer, there is a standard practices that is going on, successful practice of GTM that is established by some other company, that you take up, you implement, and you, right? You, if you are a sales rep, you are given a script, right? Everyone in the employee has a calling script, has an email script, has a LinkedIn message script, right? There is no one-on-one personal connection or something like that, right? Every developer has a standard set of frameworks or tools that they have to adhere to, best practices of the code. This is how we are doing it, not anything else, right? All the best practices and standard data structures, algorithm, everything are already defined. So the work of a developer is just to religiously follow those things, so that the software is scalable, secure. There is no need for a developer to think, make a first principles thinking of how to make the software scalable or secure or something. Similarly, there is no need for a business person like a marketer or a sales representative to think about how am I going to connect to a customer, how am I going to approach this market. No, you have standard practices. SaaS, follow this model. Pricing, don't think about anything, this is the standard pricing model. See, those things are good, but those things have to be taken as guidelines again, but not as doctrines, right? This is the only option. So you take any company, even customer connection, they are automating. I'm not even talking about AI, right? Automating means giving a script to your employees and asking them to talk to the customer. Objection handling, these are the 5 points, these are the 5 answers. So customer support, this is the first question you have to ask, this is the second question you have to ask, right? I have had experiences dealing with customer support of some of the companies where I bring them more context than they need in my initial information. Me being a techie, I understand how debugging works, so I bring certain context which a customer support executive cannot comprehend, and they keep asking me basic questions, or they keep asking me questions like, have you switched on the switch, right? As basic as something, have you debugged this? So then I'll explain them, say, I am a developer myself, I have debugged this as much as I could, and I want this level of help from you, but they are not capable of doing it unless they finish all these questions. Only then the L2 support will accept this as a ticket from them, because that is the process that is already established. So the L1 support is designed only to handle those information. The L1 calling person is only designed to talk the script that they have to talk to a prospect. Someone is cold, ask these questions, someone is hot, ask these questions, or LinkedIn message, everything, right? So this has been happening ever since the late 2010s, right? From 2014, 15, all these automations started. I'm not even talking about AI, right? Call script is an automation, right? You don't let a new employee think what I'm going to ask to the customer. That is the intention of a call script, right? So that by itself is an automation, right? So this automation has been the mainstream way in software business, which is a knowledge based economy, right? So now anyone who is joining a new team, I'm talking about even before 2020, joining a new team, if they are a sales rep, they will get a script and they are going to ask those questions, right? If they are a developer, they get a requirement spec and they just have to do code inside it, right? They don't have to worry about which market is this serving, which customer it is serving, what is the business priority of this. No, even if they ask questions, companies are so big that even their reporting manager or the manager to them will not have answers to all these things, right? Because everything is segmented, because everything is organized properly for productivity, not for creativity, right? So now when everything is properly scripted for every role, should we be surprised when all these things can be automated by an AI? And a human being and a sales agent is going to make a call and they are going to talk to a customer and they are only going to ask these scripted questions, right? And the objection handling, again 4 questions, 5 questions, all the script, entire whatever all the possible questions that you could ask to a human, it is given to you. Why do you need the human to actually ask the question? It could be automated, right? That is what has been happening after the AI era. So the stage was already set before the AI era, where the entire collective software industry or the entire collective knowledge-based economy, on which software industry is a huge player, right, have already drifted towards productivity than creativity. Drifted so much that they forgot that creativity is the core value that they are processing here, right? So that is the primary root cause that gives us all a fear that we are all replaceable, because we are all working as process machines, right? When we are already working as process machines, right, we can be automated, right? We are already following some processes, right? Why should it be done by a human? That is a logical question. That is why everyone who has worked in the industry for so many years, this is the reality to them. What is the reality? Okay, process is the reality to all of them. Who is a better process executor than a human is a machine, actually, right? Process execution, you don't need humans. Actually, machines do it better. That's why we have washing machines. That's why we have mixer grinders. Everything that does a job very tremendously better, far better than a human being, right? So you don't want all these things, or you can't comprehend anything outside of this, because so many years the industry has been designed this way, right? So now it is really essential for us to understand that this is not in sync with the core value of a core system of a knowledge based economy. Is that convincing? Is that logical? Right? So now that we saw whatever has been happening over the last decade, right? So this whatever has been happening in the last decade can be automated in the software industry, or because a lot of things has where humans have become process machines already. And now it is being replaced by actual machines. That is what is happening. Okay. So now, in order for us to not be process machines, right? That has always been important even before AI was implemented in our work lives, right? Because we should not be process machines. Because we are in a creative value producing business, right? Where our core value lies in creativity, right? So let's rethink knowledge based economic concepts again with respect to software creation, about how, and from there let's start building. Let's forget the reality of whatever that has been taught to us in the last decade or in the last 2 decades. I never started my career two decades back, right? I was still at school or something like that. But let's go there before all this process and all this things automated, even before AI came. Let's go there and rethink, so that what can be done relevant so that for another 20 years we can be relevant. Does it make sense? Because if we approach the industry with the reality of whatever that is happening now, we cannot think beyond that, because we are used to be process machines. Okay, GTM there is a process, marketing there is a process, sales there is a process, first call there is a process, cold call there is a process. Doesn't value creativity at all, right? So let's take a step back and again see this, right? So where knowledge based economy, again a software industry, knowledge based economy primarily works on this structure, right? So where you have context and processing is the primary skill that we could bring in, right? So what do we mean by context and processing here, right? Like in the example that, and so see, the idea is, this is how, this is what the valuable insight an employee can bring in, or a person associated to a business can bring in, right? So our goal is to align ourselves towards this. Only then we'll be valuable, right? As simple as that, right? And we just saw the reality of where we are trained to be process machine, so we are trying to come out of it. Okay, so when thinking this, right, where this is an information to insight converting system where we are part of it, and what we bring to the table is consciousness with respect to knowledge based economy, right? So consciousness has, I'm calling, using this term consciousness to have collectively do two things. Okay, where what are all the information that you could bring yourself, that is what I'm calling context. See, there is an information that is given as an input, which is a raw material. Other than this information, what are the things that you could bring as a context is what you are valued here, right? Because this is the skill that you are actually bringing, and how you are processing this context and the given information, the relationship, how many dimensions you are seeing it to create something of an insight that is valuable, is what sets you apart, right? Or this is the basic expectation of how the system will work, right? So here, so let's go to the previous example where previously we were discussing about processing agriculture data, right? Let's take one example of that. So there we saw the information is agriculture data, right, of Tamil Nadu or Haryana for that case, right? The context, what a proper knowledge based economy person should bring is, so you have agri data of Haryana, right, or Tamil Nadu, right? And the context I should know is, Haryana has perennial rivers, Tamil Nadu doesn't have perennial rivers. What are all the dependent factors that Haryana has for its crop agriculture, and what are the things that Tamil Nadu has as dependency, is what you bring in, right? Knowing this is very important. That is what will make you more valuable, right? Knowing this is the foundation, right? Now let's take two cases. So this is a very fictional story again. Let's take some actual story. Okay, let's take some actual story of a developer and a business person, because those are the two broader divisions in software company. Okay, where what is the context, what is this context that we are talking about, right? To understand what is the context that will become valuable. Okay, so let's take a case where I'm just giving my personal example where I have contributed to a certain things, right? So as you know, we are a WhatsApp vendor, right? WhatsApp API vendor, right? So a couple of months back, a customer came to us, and who's an existing customer. They have a new requirement where they wanted to send some notifications to their employees, one, and two, they wanted to enable a chatbot for their employees to access certain official data. Okay, for where employees can open their own WhatsApp account and ask questions in their WhatsApp to the company's official number, and the company's official number will give them data, right, of what from their internal systems. Okay, so immediately after they said this requirement, right, my first question to them was, see, having an employee portal or sending a notification to an employee through email and through WhatsApp are two different things, because with respect to email, the company owns the email domain. The company owns the email login of an employee, right? The company owns the email login of the employee. Okay. So, but with WhatsApp, I as a person, not as an employee, I own my WhatsApp number. You own your WhatsApp number. You are not owning it as or you are not accessing it through your company's authorization, right? So, when company is giving you access to your data, to its data, and you are accessing it through your authorization as an employee, right? Having an email login is very simple. It's very straightforward. That's how everything has worked. But when you are opening up some of these functionalities to an employee's WhatsApp number, there is a probability that this employee might quit and you have no control over them. There is a probability that this employee might have changed their number and their older number could have been used somewhere else, right? So before even thinking about So the customer called us to get APIs. Okay, so to the customer, I am a developer, right? So I developed WhatsApp APIs. So they called me to ask APIs. So how do we send this? Just send your API documents. So for them it was development ready. Okay, but I put this question and they said they will go and review this project altogether, whether they can do it, because they are from a regulated industry. They want to ensure that this doesn't cause any security breach at their end, or it doesn't cause any compliance breach at their end. Okay, so they want, because how to authorize a WhatsApp number, that is the primary question here with respect to laws. Okay, because you are giving an official data to an employee's personal WhatsApp number. Yeah, they are your employee, but it gets stored from WhatsApp. There is no way to delete, for a company to delete. But if it is sent through a Teams chat or something like that, or a Slack chat or something like that, the login is still controlled by the employee, right? So putting a chatbot in Slack or Teams is still under the purview and the control of the company, but putting a chatbot on WhatsApp is not on the company's control. Okay, so this is the context I provided them, right? I was a developer, and they approached me as I'm being a developer here. All the ask of that company is that I provide a API documentation. That is what they wanted. Okay, so it is my responsibility as a developer to know the context that yes, this is a regulated industry. There is a organization wide policy that they might have for employee to access customer data. So I need to be aware of GDPR, data privacy laws and all these things. So right. So this is the context that I bring in, and I say to the business that, see, you have to rethink this project. See, of course, as a developer, if I had given an API, or as a vendor, if I had given an API, right, we would have got that project from them and we would have got them paid, right? But just because I said this, they said they are going to reconsider the project. Now there is no way for us to get money, right? But they value us as a vendor more because we are bringing in more context here, right? Because the next time they have an idea, we will be the first point of contact to them because we provide more and more and more context to them. Okay, so the context that I provided here, right, where we talk about data protection, data privacy, or org policy, are these technical or a developer skill, developer context? Did I talk about API throttles? Did I talk about API authentication? Those are developer context, right? What I talked here is a different context, which is a cross-functional context, right? So the value that I provide is a cross-functional context in this particular case, right? So how can we be more valuable in this era is where in a knowledge-based economy, I am not even talking about AI, okay, where in a knowledge-based economy, where your consciousness is more valued, where some developers are valued more than some other developers, or some marketers are valued more than some other marketers, is because they had always brought in cross-functional context. Okay, because even if you take 2019 or 2018, there will be a pool of 5 years experienced people, right? There will be a layer. So one set of people can only write code. Okay, other set of people can think about algorithms, APIs and other clean code or something like that. The next set of developers will think about scalability, production issues, all these things, right? But the most valued developers are those who think all these things, but also can think from a business context. Like this, what impact will the code I am going to write or the API I am going to provide could have on the business, right? Which is, in this case, it is data protection and org policy, right? Compliance, right? So this is these are all developers tiered skills, right? Context that I am bringing. When the API asked, what is the API authentication? Yes, good. Instead of blindly giving the code or the API, I ask certain questions about security and all these things. Those are the context that is. But who is more valued are the ones who bring in business context. Okay, this has been true even before the AI era. Okay, this has been true even in the previous decade. The developers who got more value are the ones who could bring in cross-functional context. You have to be good at this also. That is why this is a whole stack. Okay, you can't be a good developer without writing code or thinking designs, right? You have to do this, and also your added value. So the more a developer can bring in this layer, the more value they will have as an employee. They'll probably get good hikes, they'll grow in their career and all these things, right? And they go on to become business executives, right? They go on to become the leaders of the company and all those things, right? And they go on to become founders in new companies or join as executives, all those things, right? So someone who could do this. Now this is what has been a value, right, brought in by an employee even before the 2019 era. Okay, so this is an example of what a business could do, a developer could do, right? So similarly, let's take a case of a business person. So let me draw another example from our own business. So where last month we were having a discussion with one of our customers, right? So they have a huge set of database, right, on their CRM, okay, of their past leads. Of all those are organic databases who reached out to the business for their own requirements, right? And they wanted to retarget those customers or retarget those leads. Okay, so they had tried a lot of retargeting, right, in the past, but most of them didn't bring in results. Okay, so when we propose this project, right, what are the questions that we ask them immediately is, right, so we are going to retarget through WhatsApp, right? So we first need to know when they have a database of about 10 years, because they are in business for the whole decade, right? So should we target all the 10-year database, or should we target the last 1 year people, or should we target the last 3-month database? We cannot target because they just closed, right? They just became lost. So there is no point in retargeting them. So there should be a buffer space where, and we could not be going more behind in time that their lifestyle has changed or their life has changed altogether. So define this sweet spot where we can actually target. So that was the first question I asked. Okay, then what is the last stage they were in when they said they don't want to participate? Let's say, for example, if they were involved in a lot of things, if they got rejected for pricing, or if they didn't choose to purchase for due to pricing reasons, or they didn't choose to purchase because the services didn't match with their exact requirements, there are probability that we would have updated the services and all those things, right? So we asked them to segment the customers like this. In likewise, we wanted to create the total idea that we gave them was having 4 level of dimensions of segmenting their contact database, which will create about what 40 buckets of these audience from this timeline alone. Okay, where we ask them to create 40 buckets of customers so that we can write messaging for each of these buckets, not send a predefined script for everyone. Instead of blindly blasting to all the 10,000 contacts, it is always easier to send or it is always mindful to send a targeted message to a particular customer. Okay, so this was the context. This was their business, right? They had been working there, right? So the context that I brought to them was, this is some of the best practices in the industry, and also combining the best processes and the way of segmenting them, we are able to target them in a very tailored way, in a very customized way. So that is the context, that so that your the conversion probability is high. See, as a vendor or as a salesperson, here I am being the salesperson, right? I'm managing the business. I'm trying to bring in new project so that we can have new revenue from this customer, right? As a salesperson, my intent is to bring revenue, right? That is my only intent, right? So here what happens is, if we take this customer and if we had proposed, right? See, you have 10,000 records, right? So let's take all the 10,000 and let's send a message to all the 10,000. 3-4 messages means we would have gotten the X amount as revenue, Okay, but now what I said told them is, let's not send to all the 10,000. Let's probably target 1,000 or 500, and also segment the 1,000 into 40 buckets, right? So each bucket becomes very small, so that we can tailor the targeted messages, and we send probably 1 or 2 messages before they find whether they are interested or not. Okay, so in this case, if we had sent, we would have sent about 40,000 messages or something. Okay, here we are probably going to send 3,000 or 4,000 messages here. Okay, actually, me as a salesperson, if I have to think only as a salesperson or as a script, if I have to follow a process, I wouldn't bring in this context, which is more beneficial to their business rather than to my business. So right, so here we have to be mindful and creative where it is beneficial to their business, so that they value us for this context and not for the message blast that we are going to send, right? Because they are purchasing our product to send messages. The more number of messages we send, the more value to us. But is that actual value to them? Because they are paying our product so that they can get qualified leads. That is the purpose of it. So if they could get qualified leads at this cost, then they value more. A more qualified lead. So this is the context that I am bringing. Okay, so I'm not saying that this is a selfless service where we don't think about money or something. No, if we offer this as a value to the customer, they will bring us any new projects, or they will refer us. So this particular client has referred us to 3 other businesses actually. Okay, so the revenue that we have gotten from them is more than actually if we had done this project actually. Okay, so that is what happened eventually. Okay, so instead of bringing or getting context from them, how much I am just focusing on the processing, just getting input from them and just processing. Okay, this is the requirement, I will give you API, you do the work. That is what I had no context here then in the first case. The second case, okay, we have to send 10,000 messages to 10,000 people, give the content, we will send the message to 10,000 people. Then this is again information and processing. I don't bring in any context. Okay, so the more value for in a knowledge based economy is where you bring in cross functional context. Okay, so whether you are from business or whether you are from technology, what you are going to bring here is cross functional context, what I am going to bring. Okay, so this is how practically, if you are a business person, you have to think what more context that I can bring in here. If you are an engineer, if you are a developer, what more context that you can bring in. Okay, they might have not thought that context, or they might have already thought that context. Okay, the value that you are bringing, if it is only going to be processing, you can be automated, your work can be automated. Yes, so the only unique thing that will differentiate you from others and from an automation is the context. How much context that you bring in. Okay, how much context. So everything else eclipses, only this matters. Okay, if we have to be relevant. Okay, someone might ask, right, why not ask context to AI itself? Why cannot AI give context? Because AI can give context, right? I can just put in this requirement to ChatGPT and ask, tell me what are the things that this customer has not thought. I can ask that and ChatGPT might give me. And maybe it would have given this particular case. Or here I would have asked ChatGPT, say, see, I have this contact database. How do I segment and target? Maybe it would have given the same thing that I had said, right? So why not get this from AI itself? Is, see, why are we doing this exercise all together? We are doing this how to coexist our jobs with also AI's automation, right? So yes, of course, AI can do this. AI can give you some of the context that you have missed or the customer has missed. Okay, but if you have to be relevant, right, you will have to bring in more context that an AI couldn't bring. Okay, because when you have outsourced your context bringing in ability to a machine, when you have automated your context bringing in ability to a machine, then you are automatable. Whatever work you are doing becomes automated. Yes, does it make sense? Because processing can be automated anyway, right? So in knowledge based economy, these two are the important things, right? Processing can be done by a machine, right? Processing can be done through a script even. Before AI, it was done through script, right? Calling script and other things, right? So processing can always be done by some manual or Excel sheet or documented automations, process automations. Okay, so that is totally possible. Okay, so bringing in context is what differentiates, right, a human, or bringing in context is what justifies a human's existence here, actually, in the value creation chain. Because if it is only going to be processing, it could be automated. If it is only processing, it could be automated. Then the justice to the existence of a human being, right, comes only if the human beings comes with context, right? So in order for us to retain our jobs in the future, bringing in context, we should be capable of bringing in context. Okay, more than A, less than A, doesn't matter. Okay, but you should keep on bringing in context. Okay, okay, that if that is the case, okay, then should we not use AI itself? Should I not take this case and put to AI and ask if there are any missing context? Should we not use AI at all? So that is the next logical question, right? Should I only use AI for processing, or should I use this? So how to actually approach AI? So we have established the principle. Okay, that is what we are trying to establish here first. Okay, the principle is you have to be able to create new context to your work so that you stay valuable. That is the principle, right? So how do we approach, how do we ensure that we are actually doing it while also leveraging the new technology or the power of automation? That is what we have to be thinking, actually doing, right? Does it make sense? So it's not that we should be blind to any new technology, new automation. No, I am going to do it manually only so that no, that's not the case. Okay, what we have to retain is the ability to think new context and or bring in new context. That is the primary thing that we have to retain here, right? Because that is what is value to us, right? So how do we approach this? That is the primary question. Okay, so primarily, what are all, just with this AI era, what people are doing is people are using AI to generate context. That is what is happening. Okay, yes, you are outsourcing your thinking to AI. you approach a problem, what do you automatically do? You throw it to an AI, right? So that, this is true for freshers, this is true for experienced, this is true for employees, this is true for executives, or anyone who propagates the use of AI in software, in automation. This is what they are doing, right? So how should we retain our value while also accepting the truth that there are some context that is brought in by AI also, right? If you are a fresher, it is true that any work that you do, AI is going to give better context than you. Yes or no? It is true for most experienced employees also, sadly, right? Because it is true that if AI can bring in 10 contexts, probably I will only be bringing 6 or 7. So it feels like AI is doing better than me, right? There is some truth to it as well. Okay, there is some truth to it as well. Okay, so how do we approach this context generating mission? That's what I'm going to call it, right? Because until then, processing is always done by machines, but this context generation has now been done by AI, right? That is where it threatens all our jobs, actually. Okay, because more and more we are using AI to generate context. Does it make sense, or is it very philosophical? Are you getting? So now we're just going to see how do we approach or coexist with AI so that we retain the ability to generate context, and also so that we are valuable. Okay, so basically all organizations or all employees or executives are seeing by default AI. If you ask 10 people, is AI more smarter than you? They'll mostly say yes, right? Most of the people, because AI knows a lot of information than you. It can talk about history, it can talk about science fiction, it can talk about religion, it can talk about employment, it can talk about technology, it can talk about anything, right? So, just because it is knowing a lot of things, right, it doesn't mean you are what you are some level of, we have to feel substandard towards it. Okay, consider this. Okay, instead of, so just because AI knows everything, right, the entire industry or most of the executives and employees are seeing AI as their like ultimate solution to everything, right? Whatever they couldn't comprehend, okay, AI will comprehend. Or how do I replace my most talented workforce with AI? That's what executives are thinking, right? What are employees thinking? How do I use AI to create more work, right? How do I and this is what most people can't figure out, and that's why they are like kind of afraid that AI will take their work. Okay, so instead of seeing AI as more powerful to you, okay, just because it knows certain things more than you, right, it doesn't mean it is more powerful to you. Okay, I'm not talking this as a psychological exercise. Okay, I'll tell you with an example. Okay, are you seeing AI? Yes, AI can be one of your employees. That's the pitch, right? Everyone is seeing, right? Are you going to see AI as your manager or as your reporting? That is the one question that you have to ask. Okay, yes, AI can be a part of workforce. Let's accept that, right? But are you going to see AI as your manager or as your employee, as your subordinate? Okay. Of course, let's take these two cases. Okay. Of course, you as an employee or an executive have a manager, right? Of course, this person is supposed to know everything or supposed to do everything better than you, right? Your manager, whoever you are reporting to, or whoever you accept as a leader, is supposed to do everything better than you, right? Just because AI is doing everything better than you, or the perception that it could, because it knows a lot of things, and that's why it could produce a lot of things better than me, we are by default placing AI at this level because we accept the leadership of AI, right? But what AI will lack, or in order for us to survive, what is the only logical point of view where we could survive is bringing in context, right? So if we have to achieve this, if we have to bring in better context than AI, what we should do is we have to see AI as a smart fresher. Okay, consider a very smart fresher. Okay, you are at a 5-year or 10-year experience or a very smart subordinate. Okay, of course you feel that they know better than you when you were at their age. That's how you have to see it. Okay, right? So of course, compared to a fresher, an experienced person will know more. The context is what this experienced people will have more, and this experienced person will have more. This processing, probably this fresher might do a lot better, right? That is what a differentiation between experienced and inexperienced, right? A smart fresher will not bring in a lot of context. They will be very good at processing or fastly processing or taking in new context. If you tell them once, they will be able to remember it and apply it in another place. That is what a smart fresher or a smart someone who is starting their career will do. They will have a lot of exposure than you had at that age, probably, right? So all these are true. So but they will not have all the relevant context that you have. That is how, but maybe this could be the case, right, where you could learn some context from them in certain areas and they could learn some context from you in certain other areas, right? So if you are an executive, you have to see AI as a smart fresher rather than a higher knowledge person, which is a manager or a senior resource. Okay, right? If you have to be relevant, only those people who can think better than AI will can be more value here, right? So even if we are not better than, so let's say this is AI's capability and this is our capability, whether you are fresher or experienced, this is your capability, okay, right? Let's say there is a smart peer, your same year's experience, or a smart junior that you have. What you will do? You will not be intimidated by them, rather than you will try to collaborate, co-learn with them, right? Where you give them what they might be lacking and they give you what you learn. That is how you have to see AI, right? Where you bridge the gap between the context that you are bringing in and AI brings in by default, so that you can improve your context bringing ability, right, to match AI and then go beyond it. Because this is where it makes value for a company to pay, or this is where it makes value or makes sense for a company to pay a human being, or a human being. It could be executive, or they could be executive or employees, right? It makes sense only when the humans bring in better context than AI, not in each and every area, right? At least in certain areas, right? So I, as a human being, have to accept that I can be relevant only if I bring in better context than AI, right? There could be, consider AI as a senior resource. There could have been senior resource with better context in 2010s also, right? In 2000s also, right? How did a junior employee become more smarter than a senior person? That has always happened, right? That is how you have to see AI, where AI is always a junior employee among the company, okay? Because the context that AI brings in is going to be the basic. Anyone whom I am going to pay should be above AI. Only then it makes sense for me to pay, right? So this is the ideal picture. Like in another 10 years, if we have to have relevance in our career, this is where we have to be, where we bring in, at least in most cases, we bring in better context than AI. Okay. In 10 years, if this is the reality, how do we approach our career, day-to-day work towards this, right? So do you get the idea? You get the idea of this? So you should not be intimidated by AI, rather than use it as a smart co-worker, smart junior, smart fresher, where you teach him something, or and it could teach certain context to you, where you co-grow together, okay, right? So how do we do this, right? So let's say in our day-to-day work, okay, let's say I'm writing a code, or let's say if I'm writing a document for a customer proposal or something like that, right? Let's say I'm doing that, then what happens is this, when I write a document, now what happens is I by default write certain or before even I could write a document, most of the people are going to AI. This is the requirement, I need this. That's how AI companies pitch also. You give whole work to it, you don't do any work. Okay, if I don't do any work, how am I going to get paid then? That is the logical question, right? So how we should approach a work is, if we are going to write a document, how will we actually brainstorm with the fresher? How will we actually sit and give that task to a fresher? Okay, you will first brainstorm with them, ask them how are they going to do this task, right? Does it make sense? If you are going to let a fresher write a business proposal, you will have a structure of that business proposal. Yes or no? You will not blindly say them that, hey, go prepare, because they are a fresher. You need to give them context. This is the business problem. This is the goal of it. You have to cover all these points. This is what you will give. Or if you are giving a software development task to a fresher, what you will say is, this is the feature, this is how it will work, here are the things that you have to consider, and this is the code changes that you have to do. It has to be specifically given as a task, right? So all these things will also come with respect to AI. Okay, so instead of asking context to AI, say I'm going to write this feature, what are the things that we should do? Instead of asking that, you should have a draft in your mind. You should sit and think. Before going to AI, you should sit and think. If you're going to write code, what are the things that I should write? Then present it to AI, okay, where you explain the approach. Explain approach and your context. So these are the things that you thought, and these are the things that this software should cover, or these are the things that this business proposal should cover, okay? And then let it do the actual work. Or before that, okay, brainstorm things. Okay, brainstorm. If this approach is good, should we follow this? Consider it as a teammate. Okay, then you ask for missing context. Okay, okay, ask missing context. Now what most people are doing are they're directly asking the context, so their thought process doesn't seem fit here, right? So they will not, they are not using their intellectual ability to actually think of context. So now what we just have to flip it so that we still think of context. Let's say out of 10 contexts we are able to bring in 4 contexts. AI will probably give us 2 more contexts. Then it adds up to our memory and our thinking ability that okay, next time we'll come up with 6 contexts. If we don't ask this at all, this number becomes 0, right? Because the number of contexts you are bringing in is 0. Now at least you brought 4 contexts and you learned 2 from AI. Next time your output is probably 6 or 5. So this is how the only, and then go ask it to do the actual work. Okay, iterate on the context. You provide context instead of going without a context, just going with the title. Generate context, put in bullet points. If you are going to write a proposal, write a draft of the bullet points in your head and go here. If you are going to write a code, write a pseudocode in English. This is the approach that I am going to take. Then present it. Then ask it, okay, what are the things I am missing here? This is the intent. What are the things then it will say what are the missing contexts. If anything, you can add it to it. So every time you keep on doing it at a level, probably at the starting stage of a career, your context thinking ability will be here. Eventually it moves here. Right? Does it make sense? Or at least it gets on par so that you are not left alone. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Right? So this is how we ultimately retain. There is a probability that in order for the knowledge-based economy to work, only context matters. Whatever you are bringing in and your job to be relevant, only context matters, right? So this is one exercise where you could do, or this is how you should approach work so that your context directly becomes into this, okay? So just to summarize, right? So all these hours of discussions that we had, this is how you should approach your day-to-day work, okay? And you should ensure that every day you should ask what more context bringing ability that I designed or I developed to myself. That is what you have to thought, okay? See, historically, I want to leave with this closing thought. All automations, right? All automations across all human beings, right, have freed ourselves from doing work, some work. So you take grinder, mixer, or those things, or QA, UA automations, or anything. They have freed us from doing work so that we can focus more on bringing context. Actually, we can think. We can. This is true with work. This is true with your creativity. This is true with your whatever you are at your free time you are doing. You just have to collect more context and process more context. So all automations have enabled us. AI is the first automation in the entire human history which is showing some signs of producing context. Okay. Right? So AI is the first automation that is showing signs of producing context. So like all automations that freed us, right? This is not going to free us. Okay? This automation, if you let it automate your context thinking work, it will not free us. See, the free time that you have with not washing your clothes or with washing machine or grinder, it happens, we use that to something else, right? So those automations have freed you. This will not liberate you. Rather, it will make you a slave to people who are able to do this, actually. Because there you are going to use this context bringing mission to justify your non-existence, right? So the only way, this automation is not going to liberate you like other automations. This is not going to free you. Rather, it is going to enslave you, right? Because it is not be used by AIs containing human beings or not. It is going to be controlled by human beings who retain their thought processes, right? Because you will have to retain your thought process, only then you can be free or liberated. Okay, so resorting to AI for context thinking and processing is nothing but intellectual slavery. Okay, so what is very important moving ahead is not bringing us out of that intellectual slavery. But are we anti-AI? No. I'm not claiming that AI is all bad. Okay, machines are meant to extend human thinking, right? Machines are meant to extend human thinking, not to replace it. Okay, and your role is to delegate your labor, right? Not delegate your judgment. Okay, you have to delegate labor, but not if you are going to delegate your judgment, you lose the sense of your judgment, and who will make the decisions and judgments for you is people who still retain the judgment ability. Okay, so the idea for you all that I want to leave is, when machines started to think, when they started to produce context, let's ensure that we are not stopping ourselves from thinking. Of course, when machines started to wash clothes, we stopped ourselves from washing clothes. When machines started to spin the thread, we stopped ourselves from weaving, right? But when machines started to think, we should not stop ourselves from thinking. That is the primary takeaway for all these, because those who don't stop thinking are the one who control the world. So if you have to maintain more than your job, this is all about your freedom. The last freedom that is worth defending is the freedom of your thought. Okay, so that is worth exploring for the future as well, right? Right. Any questions?
So one question I have is that when you say ask missing context, how much context should I give? I'm not sure whether I give enough context in this case. And this is replacing my context. Let's say I'm drafting an email to a customer. And let's say this is going to be an introductory email where I have a very brief discussion with the prospect. And then I am going to send a follow-up email. With, let's say, this is what we spoke about, where I want to have a more detailed conversation with you. This is a typical example.
Yeah.
Here, most of the times I might miss sharing a case study or something. Even it is also not giving me any context there. So, whether I am missing out on context or is it really adding context?
Okay, so the case that you are talking about is writing an introductory email to a customer. As a business executive, you are reaching out to a customer and you have to write an introductory email to that particular customer, right? So in this case, right, let's see how to approach this in this example. Okay, probably today what you are doing, you're just opening ChatGPT and you're just writing, hey, I need to send an introductory mail to this customer. This is the, what else you say?
So basically, I'll say this is the indirect email.
Indirect email.
Since
Ah.
I've already given enough
Ah.
company details already.
Okay.
It will automatically.
Okay. So you just share the LinkedIn URL of the customer, and then you ask, write an introductory email to this particular targeting this particular customer for the business that you are working on, which you have already mentioned. Right? This is the company that you are working on, right? So instead of giving this, what I'll say is, right, that's where let's split this into context and processing. Okay. Okay. Let's approach this task that we are going to use AI for processing. Definitely. Okay. There is no doubt about it. Okay. We are going to use AI for processing, definitely. Okay. So what is processing here is writing writing the actual content of the email. That is what processing is, right? That is what processing is, and the context here is introductory email and the business, right? Instead of just giving this introductory email and business, then you don't think of anything else, because here there is no context that you have already thought, right? Because introductory email is the purpose, that is your task, right? And the customer LinkedIn, that is the only thing that you are given. That is not even a context, that is input, right? This is information. Whatever you have given to the AI here is not context, it is input, right? Because what is your task? Your task is to write an introductory email. Who is the customer? This customer LinkedIn profile. Are these context? These are inputs, because without these two, can anyone do this work? So these are not context. You are not given context at all here. Okay, so now what is context is what you bring into this table is what context is, right? So let's say if you are going to write this email, there is no AI, there is no script, intro to script. You have to define the introductory email to this particular customer. What you will do? You will first go through the LinkedIn profile of the customer, which segment they belong to, what problem that they might have, right? And then you think all these things, and then you jot bullet points. First I will say this, next I will say this, next I will say. First, probably introduce myself. Then talk about their business, or talk about their profile or something. Talk about their something that we noticed from their LinkedIn profile or from their website, just to make a relationship. And then what problem they might have in their current business, so that where we could extend, whether this is an introductory email, what is your objective? Do you want to have them come and sit in a demo with you, or do you want them just to reply, make them curious and reply? What is the intent of this first mail? Yes, ultimately you want them to come to a demo, but will that happen in the first email itself? That is where context comes in. So you have to be aware of your goal first. Just write an introductory email, it can spit out anything, right? So if you give this task to a fresher, these are the questions he will ask, right? Or he or she will ask. A smart fresher will ask these questions, right? What they will ask? Okay, I am writing this introductory email. What is the purpose of this email? They should respond, or they should come and sit in a demo. What is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of this? What are the things that I should mention? All these things they will ask, right? So you have to by default think all these things and give a structure to this email, like a bullet point, and then present to AI, right? Not asking to generate content immediately. Okay, you have to ask, okay, brainstorm, okay, do you think this will work? My goal is to get a reply, any reply. Do you think this structure will work? My goal is to make them curious and give a reply. This goal AI can't define for you. You have to define, right? Because you have to understand the human psyche to define that I am reaching out someone as cold. It's not necessary that they will have to give my time for give their time for 1 hour or so and sit a demo so that I could sell something to them, right? It doesn't make sense, right? So what is the first goal here for us? So that goal is where we have to start from here. So this is the goal for this particular email, not for the project. And these are the things. For this goal, does this work together? That is the second step, brainstorm. Okay? And after that, it will say what you are missing. You could add this, or these are too much. Maybe we can control. You have to do this brainstorm. At the end, you come at a finalized context. Okay, these are the things that we are going to write. These are the ideas. For this goal, it is enough to say only maybe we need not talk about this or something like that. Some finalized context you will arrive, right? Only after this you command it to do the processing. Okay, now you have the idea, convert this into a email. Okay, and then it is very important, and then you have to own it. Okay, this is very, very, very important. You have to own the content as if you wrote it. So you have to review it before that. If you have to own it, right? See, I do some job and I say you did it, right? Will you own it? No, you have to feel responsible for it. You will feel responsible only after checking that these are good. Now I can claim this in my ownership. That's how you accept something, right? If I give something defective, will you accept? No. What will you say? If you have to have it in your hand, what will you say? If someone asks about it, what will you say? It's output. That's what you say, right? You're having something defectful. Someone points at it. What is your immediate response? This is not mine. This is someone else. That's what you say. Now you have the excuse to claim a defective output or a half-boiled output from AI as saying this is an AI generated content. I didn't think of it. Okay, what if you thought of it? Would this be better? That is the question we all should ask. But then the only way to approach this is take the context, brainstorm context with it, bring in your context. That's the first step. Brainstorm the context and then do the actual work, right? And then review the actual work so that you can claim it as your own work. You should be proud to claim it as your own work. Right? You should be proud to show that this is the introductory email I wrote. Then it should not have emojis, it should not have long hyphens, right? All these are typical AI content that people can find, right? So then you make it as if you typed it. At least remove this hyphens and place smaller hyphens. At least don't include this arrows in emails, right? So if we are not even doing this, then we are not even owning our work. If we are not even owning your work, what does it make sense for any company to pay us? Right? Are we owning our work, or are we just translating certain works? Right? Does it make sense? So, in order to write an email, people were doing all these things for so many years before the automation of scripts even came. I'm talking about that automation. So it's been long since people did all these things. That is true. Okay, not with AI. Okay, these were automated with scripts. So you have to think. Okay, let's think you are in 2017-18. Okay, a cold email that is sent as an introductory email from a company to any business, right? To any user through any email ID is going to remain the same because it is all script, right? No one, everyone copies from a master document that is there and then sends to the prospects, right? So this is what context. This is where context comes. So probably you gave 3 points. AI enhances with a 4th point, or says instead of this, let's say this. Okay. Now this goes into your brain as a feedback. Remember, your brain is modeled. Your brain is the source model for all AI brains, neural networks. That is how this works. Neural networks works with reinforced learnings and feedbacks. Okay. When you stop yourself from undergoing reinforced learnings, your brain will not work at all. Right. So you work on the context by default and you give it AI, it updates it and gives to you a secondary version, an upgraded version. It becomes a feedback loop to your neural networks, your own sensory system, so that next time you generate a context, the first version will be better. So that in another 10 years, you still stay relevant. You will expand your horizon by thinking cross-functional context like this. Okay, so instead of just giving our tasks and passing it on to AI directly, this is what we will be paid in the future, because this generation of from this to the actual email, it is automatable, right? This will not change, right? So this is where the value is. Does it make sense? Right? So you have to, this is how you have to approach any development task or any business task. This is how you just not go and ask for solutions, right? It's very easy. Like I said in one of the earlier sessions that we were taking, for a child to ask any questions to their parents, it's very easy. They'll get all the answers. They need not think at all. So don't behave like a child. Okay? You have to behave like an adult, where you go with context by default, right? And only ask missing context to it. Only use AI as a tool to improve your context generation ability and actually do the processing. Does it make sense? Any other question?
Is there any way like we can improve cross-functional knowledge? For example, let's say I'm today in industry, where I will be getting maybe more context in this particular industry. Maybe I may not be here for 3 years or only 4 years or 5 years. So I'll be with the course skills that I have today, I'll be entirely transforming to a maybe other industry. But still, how to make sure we are also grasping the cross-functional context. So we are able to process the same fundamentals with the other businesses as well. So we are able to grasp the context there and produce the same, the contextual outcomes as well.
Okay, so I think, so the question was, we are gaining, we are inclining towards cross-functional context generation in our as our core skill. When I switch industries, how do I upgrade myself to this, right? See, cross-functional, there are two different things, okay? One is cross-verticals, okay? And other is cross-functionals, Okay, cross function means a department inside a company. It can be in any company. It could be finance, it could be development, it could be marketing, it could be anything. Vertical is industry specific. See, marketing inside a manufacturing company and marketing inside a software company and marketing inside a construction company, at a high level they are the same. Okay, so the cross functional context that you are bringing in is, so okay, you are working in marketing, how do you think about operations, how do you think about sales, and from sales context, from operations context, from technical context, these are the things that are important for marketing, for a business company, for a construction company, for, so this vertical is not skill. Okay, it is knowledge, right? These are ideas. You just need to understand. So let's say you are working in a software company marketing. Okay, you understand about the operations of software company, you understand about the tech of software company, you understand about the sales process of software company, right? Tomorrow you are made as a same marketer, same function, but in a different vertical. Now what you have to take is operations of a construction company, operations of a technology of a construction company, and sales of, are these are knowledge today. What is your skill is asking these questions. So asking these questions become your context. Okay, this is acquirable. Okay, this is like studying a theorem. This is like applying the theorem. Okay, applying what theorem to apply where. Okay, so when you switch industries, if you are if you are a cross functional expert in your function, when switching industry, you will know what question to ask when with respect to these cross functional things. Even though you don't have the knowledge, you will have the right questions to ask. Yes, you don't know the tech of a construction company, you are in software, okay, but you know where to consider tech while making a marketing decision. So even though you will not have the answers, you will know the right questions to ask. And who are those people always valued are people who bring in context. So your role is to bring in context, not answers. Bring in saying, hey, have you considered tech here? Have we considered the delay in construction here? Because you would have considered the delay in development here. That's it. Construction delay and technical development delay could be two different things, right? But software and construction. But thinking about delay is what your skill is. Okay, so that is the core competence. This is a knowledge. Okay, does it make sense? Any other questions? Yeah.